All right, everybody. Hello and welcome to this episode. I am Derek Hegna, the Sports Nerd. What joining me today is Michael Bollig. Say hello.
What's up, y'all?
All right. So you want to tell people what you're getting into first? Want to tell people what you're all about?
So, I'm a freshman at Oklahoma State University, sports management major, and I love sports and love talking about sports. So, here I am.
Yep. He was in First Take Your Take with me back when that was a thing on Facebook. That was
Yep.
glorious. But anyway, so today we're here to talk about our perspectives on the NFL draft. That was a few weeks ago now, I want to say. We've
Yeah, I
had time
think.
to digest it. We've had some time to really evaluate everything. So let's start with just how your favorite team did. So for you, that would be the Seattle Seahawks. So
Yeah.
why not you start with that?
It's a questionable draft, but like always, Seattle Seahawks find a way to have a questionable draft. They reach for talent or trade down every single draft, and they reach for their guys, and you don't know how they're going to turn out because they were reaches. But I think that we did okay. We reached for our guys. Jordan Brooks being our first round pick, we probably could have gotten him in the second or third round. But I saw him play. He torched Oklahoma State earlier this year. I saw him play in that game. He literally torched us. He had a great game that game. So, firsthand experience, I got to see him play at a high level. So, I think that he'll be a good fit, but Patrick Queen was still on the board. I would rather had him because I think that he's already there. I mean, he's already going to be a star, in my opinion. Jordan Brooks may be a couple years away from building up to the star. Uh, but Bobby Wagner wasn't projected to be a star year one when he got drafted.
That is
Mel
true.
Kiper, I believe, gave that draft a C minus with Bobby Wagner and Russell Wilson being our second and third round picks. So, I mean, we'll see how he turns out. And overall, I mean, we had some other positions of need. We got a running back from Miami who's I think is going to be good. He had a lot of big plays.
Dallas, you mean? DJ Dallas?
Um, DJ Dallas, yeah. He had a lot of big play opportunities last year at Miami. So that's going to be nice, especially with our running backs being injury prone, as you may call it. Chris Carson hasn't had really a healthy season yet. Rashad Penny got injured last year. Basically, our whole run backfield last year was injured. We picked up Marshawn Lynch week 16 or something. So we did need a little more depth in the running back position. Not a big fan of taking two tight ends. We already had some
Disley.
good tight ends with Will Disley, Hollister, Greg Olson. Now we got two more. I mean,
Yeah,
so not
it's
a big,
definitely complicated, I would say.
yeah. And I wish we focus more on the secondary during the draft because I like our secondary, but they're young. And there's been plays that they've been burnt on. Trey Flowers, I really like, but he does get burned um, on those big play opportunities. So I wish we focused more on the secondary.
I mean, that's definitely understandable. I mean, the Bobby Wagner Russell Wilson draft, I think that kind of killed the draft grade, or at least as a credible mark
Yeah,
for a draft, just because that was the moment that everyone saw, okay, you need to wait at least a couple years to really
yeah.
figure everything out. And sure, you could have these quick fire reactions. That's the point.
Mhm.
You speculate about things, it's
Yeah.
unavoidable. But
Mhm.
just because you expect something to be bad doesn't mean that's going to stay that way.
Exactly.
Otherwise, we would have literally the top draft picks every year shine. There would be no such thing as the draft bust
Or draft steals.
or draft steal. Yeah, exactly. Now, I think the one thing that I found is that Jordan Brooks I kind of questioned the fit a little bit just because he's always been more of a run-stuffing linebacker to me from what I saw from him at Texas Tech. And I think that the Seahawks, from what I've seen from them over the last few years at least, they like those linebackers that do everything. They like the linebackers that can blitz. They like the linebackers that can stop the run. They like the linebackers who can cover passes. Exactly. And I think Brooks is definitely a ready linebacker for run-stopping plays. I just don't know how he is in coverage. I don't know how he is, like, blitzing per se. Meanwhile, you had someone like Queen on the board, like you said, who seemed a little more ready, was a little undersized maybe, and could need a little bit to put everything together. But the Seahawks have that coaching staff there, so that's not a problem there. So that was a little confusing to me, and I'm sure the Ravens were happy about that. More on them in a little bit. But Darrell Taylor was kind of confusing in the second-round pick, too, just because I heard stuff that he was injury-prone in his last year at Tennessee. He was projected to be a early day 3, if not late day 2 pick. And then the Seahawks drafting him in the second round, that was a big push-up. And especially I don't know what edge rushers were still on the board. I know Anai was still on the board.
Epinesa.
Epinesa was still on the – was he still on the board at that time?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. Like, yeah, that was –
yeah, man.
The Bills got lucky. I know you've mentioned them to me a couple times, so we'll definitely be getting to them at least a little bit. And I don't know what pick I liked best out of them. I think that their third-round pick was the one I liked the best.
Damian Lewis.
Yeah, that one was good because they needed some offensive line help. Someone from LSU, they always know how to get the big guys up there. So.
Yeah, and that whole O-line protected Burrow all season long.
Yeah.
Which was why Burrow had such a good year. One of the reasons he had so much.
I mean, it's no surprise that every offensive player that was eligible to be drafted was picked up either through the draft or in undrafted free agency. That's huge.
Yeah, and then they have another receiver next year, probably that will be like a top
Jamar Chase,
pick.
Absolutely.
Might be a top 5 pick. So, I mean, that offense was crazy.
Yeah, it's going to be nuts. But anyway, so now to the Chargers, just to balance everything out a little bit. Like, obviously, Justin Herbert, the minute Tua went there was the minute that had to go. Like, there was no question about it. Like, we all knew they were getting a quarterback. I was thinking they could just surprise everybody, go for an offensive tackle, go for Isaiah Simmons since he was on the board. But ultimately, I can understand why. And I know that there is an obvious stigma around quarterbacks from Oregon specifically because you had guys like Akili Smith, Joey Harrington, Marcus Mariota that never quite panned out as expected. And now all of a sudden, I know the obvious complaint is going to be, why is Justin Herbert going to be any different? I think the good news is, though, that they're probably going to give him at least a little bit of development where the other guys kind of got thrown into the fire pretty early. And outside of Mariota, I don't think they were really ready for that.
Yeah. The issue with Justin Herbert, his big knock is his mechanics. I mean,
exactly.
He doesn't have very good mechanics. But you know who else didn't? Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes. Those two sat out and developed their game and become superstars. I think Justin Herbert's going to become one of those two guys. I think talent-wise, he was better than Burrow, honestly. I really do.
Wow.
I'll
bold plays, bold predictions coming in from the young blood.
Man, I really like him, though, because he didn't have the weapons that Joe Burrow did at LSU. Joe Burrow had a great O-line, a great running back, great receivers. He had a perfect system. Justin Herbert had good players around him, but he was able to play great with those decent players, you know?
Yep. I'm just going to see if I can turn it over to the light on real quick, see if that's any better. Okay, that'll work a little bit, at least I think. But anyway, actually, wait, nah, probably not. No big deal, though. Anyway, small technical difficulty, but we'll deal with it. But anyway, probably the biggest shock to me was when the Chargers traded up to get Kenneth Murray, just because the Chargers have a penchant to just stay still in the draft, let players come to them. If anything, I thought they were going to just trade down because I wanted them to get depth. That's actually good. Thank you. But anyway, all right. Anyway, going back to Kenneth Murray.
Yeah.
The Chargers have a penchant to just stay still. They have a penchant to just stay where they are, let players come to them. And I thought, if anything, they were going to trade down, to be honest. I really did. But all of a sudden, I saw Patriots trade up to Chargers, and you saw my live stream on this where I was freaking out over it. Like, what is going on here? What is happening? Why is the Matrix collapsing now of all times? And then all of a sudden they drafted Murray, which I got. I thought I didn't know if there was an offensive tackle that was worth trading up for at that stage outside of maybe Josh Jones. Mm-hmm. And when you move up and trade all of your day 2 picks, that's a sign that you really have to like the player.
Yeah.
And the good news, I think, for the Chargers is I was kind of expecting them to go linebacker at that spot anyway. Mm-hmm. I thought they were going to end up drafting Logan Wilson out of Wyoming with that pick, to be honest, which was kind of a good thing because he wasn't there anymore by that time.
Yeah.
But, I like Murray. I know that he's a big-time run stopper, and I know that the run defense in LA has been kind of bad over the last couple of years. Yeah. Like, I know that they've been run over more than a few times, so they needed somebody who can be a quarterback of the defense, really stop that run. He's good in blitz packages as well, from what I've heard. I think the only knock that I really heard about him was coverage. He wasn't really called upon much for it.
Yeah.
But that kind of wasn't his point. And the thing is, what I heard was that the coverage abilities that he did show were at least decent. There's something there. So it's not like he's just starting from zero and just going to be thrust into something.
Yeah.
I think he's going to learn a lot from a relatively deep linebacking core. They have coverage options. Guys like Drew Tranquil and Kaiser White have that on lockdown, basically. And I think that there's going to be an option in there for him to just slide in, get his spots, and by 2020, he'll be an established starter. Easy. Actually, 2021 in this case. I keep forgetting that's 2020 now.
Yeah.
But
I honestly like that pick of Murray, man, because after Murray, there was really only Patrick Queen as a really good option at linebacker, so there was a gap after Patrick Queen and Murray of linebackers. So you get your guy. He's a great linebacker. He played in the Big 12, which is an offense studded conference. So he played the best of the best, and he was able to be a great defensive player in a more offensive focused setting, which AFC West is also more offensive.
Oh, yeah, definitely. With Mahomes and everything in there.
He's going to be playing against those more offensive teams in that division like he did in the Big 12. So I think it's a good fit, man.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I actually didn't think about that, so that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I think they could have maybe gone for another offensive lineman. I think that was kind of the one big knock I could really give them.
Yeah.
But they ended up drafting, I think, well. The day 3, they drafted at least someone who could be a complementary back to Eckler and Jackson, which is nice. Mm-hmm. They drafted a receiver who could also get kickoffs, who could get punt returns. They got someone in Darius Jennings, but I just don't know where he is with because receiving, I don't trust him, but I think he's a return specialist at that stage, so I can't really tell. Gilman was the Adrian Phillips clone, and that was it. Like, that's literally the only reason I think they went for him.
I really like that KJ Hill pick, man.
Yeah, I was about to get to him. That was a steal.
Yeah,
I was like, wait, he was still here?
He was projected like 3rd round.
Yeah.
And he flipped all the way down to the 7th round. So that was a steal, man.
That was
especially
big.
With all the little name wide receivers being drafted ahead of him. I think that was a great pick, dude.
I mean, the little name receivers, I mean, this was a deep receiver class. I don't
Mhm.
think there was any question about that.
Yeah.
So obviously you were going to see guys that in normal years should have been drafted maybe at least 2 rounds higher than they were. And then all of
Mhm.
a sudden you see someone like KJ Hill just slide to the 7th round and you
Yeah.
have to take him. I think
Mhm.
there was a bunch of other guys who could have been taken in day 2 conceivably that ended up slipping. I think Tyler Johnson would have gone to day 2 in a
Mhm.
normal draft. I think Antonio Gandy Golden would have went day 2 in another draft. I didn't think Donovan Peoples-Jones out of Michigan could probably have gone in day 2 just because there was skill there. There
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of production, but that was more just on Michigan not being a good place for quarterbacks instead of just on him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously that's a big thing, I think. So, obviously you're going to get some great values, and I think we're going to be seeing that over the next couple of
Mhm.
years, definitely.
Yeah.
So anyway, now that we've gotten our favorite teams out of the way, how about we go through some favorite drafts of yours?
Favorite drafts? Whew. It's gonna be tough, but I'm gonna go with the Bills, man. A team without a first rounder. So let's just say their first round pick was Stephon Diggs because that's what they paid for Stephon Diggs.
I have to admit that was kind of worth it. They did need a number 1 receiver, and frankly, you're not going to get much value out after that.
Stephon Diggs is a surefire pick. I mean, um, where they were picking, Jerry Jeudy was already gone, CeeDee Lamb was already gone, Henry Ruggs was already gone. I
We
think,
were expecting Jefferson to go to the
yeah,
Eagles, and that didn't happen. But
yeah, that shocked me with that they picked Rieger
yep, and
over.
we'll get to that probably in a bit, I think.
Mhm. But the Bills, I mean, the first round pick, let's just say Stephon Diggs, who already has shown that he can be a top 10 receiver in the NFL. Then AJ Epineza, who was projected to be like a top 5 pick before the combine. What he's shown on the field is he can be a surefire player. He had a bad combine that made his stock slip to the 2nd round, but that's still a steal because he's shown it on the field. I like football players that show it on the field over the combine because at least I know what you're getting on the football field. And Epineza is just that. And then Zach Moss in the 3rd round, they didn't technically need a running back because Devin Singletary is there. But Zach Moss is one of my favorite running backs from this class. I think the dude's an absolute stud. He's a little on the shorter side, just like Devin Singletary was. But I think that could be a powerful 1-2 punch with Singletary and Moss being the short running backs that they are. And then, I mean, Jake Fromm, I'm not a big fan of, but there
They
were,
did need an option, though.
yeah, there were rumors that he could go 2nd or 3rd round. They get him in the 5th round. So I'm not going to knock them down for that pick because they got good value, let's just say, with him. And then Isaiah Hodgins, the receiver from Oregon State, I'm a big fan of him. He was a little bit of a sleeper, let's call him, but I think he can be really good, man.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills' defense really didn't need another piece. I think we can all agree on that. They have guys like Tre'Davious White. They have a whole bunch of young emerging players that are just going all over the field, doing multiple roles. They always seem to shine really well. Like, I
Yeah.
think with Epinesa replacing Shaq Lawson, I think that was a big thing they needed to go for. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if Buffalo has a top 5 defense and rides that into the playoffs.
Ooh, I could easily see it. They picked Ed Oliver last year, so I mean,
Exactly. And that was a steal where they got him.
yeah, like pick 9 or something.
Yeah,
Something.
9. And people were expecting him to go like top 5, maybe just a
Yeah.
little bit outside.
Mm-hmm. He was
So
like
that's
projected
big.
#1 before the season or
Yeah.
something.
And I don't think he was all that spectacular in his rookie year, but obviously when you go the jump from Houston to the NFL, that's kind of big, I would
Yeah.
say, or at least bigger than most other schools. So
Yeah.
I think we can kind of give him a small pass for that, but this will be the year where I think if he works with Epinesa and that really starts to come together, that's going to be huge.
That will be huge, man.
Yeah. And then going to all the skill players you got. Zach Moss, they did need a Frank Gore replacement, I think. They
Hmm.
did need somebody like that. I know that there were questions about Moss's knee, about how there was like a little condition in there that could have shortened his career. It was kind of like Jay Ajayi
Yeah.
back, because he was expected to be a second round pick, and then all of a sudden they found something in his knee that was bone on bone, and they were expecting that that's going to shorten his career. He
Yeah.
ends up sliding to the fifth, and he ends up being at least pretty good for a little while.
Yeah.
So I can expect, although this time Moss's knee was cleared at least. So I
Hmm.
think all of a sudden you've given Buffalo a deadly running game, along with Josh Allen, who showed that
Hmm.
he has bad athleticism as well to pull that off.
Yep.
And speaking of which, I think that's why the Jake Fromm pick was there, because Josh Allen imploded in the second half of the wild card game. I don't think
Yeah.
there's any question about that. So I
Hmm.
think at this stage, they have to figure something out. And now that they've given him a true number one receiver for the first time, they've rebuilt the offensive line over the last couple years. They've given him the running game now. I think now they drafted from not necessarily to really have him replace Josh Allen per se. I think they just drafted him to send a message to him saying, okay, this is it. Like,
Yeah.
this is year 3. We have Lamar Jackson, who won MVP. We have guys like Baker Mayfield that are showing that they can actually be successful in this league.
Hmm.
Now we need to see it from you, because this is a big moment in
Yeah.
recent history for the Bills. They're starting to make the playoffs a little more consistently, or at least starting to win more games. They
Hmm.
are starting to figure out that now that Brady is gone and Belichick could be gone in any year now, they
Yeah.
know that this is the best chance they have to win that division, because it's
Yeah.
not great right now that Brady's gone.
Hmm.
There's no clear top guy. So can the Bills end up proving that? I think the defense is going to be big, obviously. I still think that's going to be the catalyst for anything. But
Hmm.
whether I'm thinking beyond that for the offense. If that offense develops into something special, or at least something that you can say, yes, this is
Yeah.
an offense that can help ride you to the Super Bowl along with that top tier defense, I think the Bills could end up sneaking in. They could surprise a lot of people if that offense goes and
I agree.
develops, and if Josh Allen starts really picking it up.
I agree fully. I think that this is, like you said, year 3 for Josh Allen. This is do or die for him. The next year's quarterback class is pretty stacked. So you gotta show Josh Allen has to show what he's got to keep that job, because the Bills are a contender. They want to have a quarterback who can take them up to Super Bowl contenders. So if Josh Allen doesn't show that, it's time to move on.
Yep, it's the same as every little bit. And it's not like Josh Rosen, where he was thrown into just a bad situation in Arizona and then he got traded to another bad situation in Miami, so we can't really get him. But this is a situation where, okay, we've been building with you because we think we can win with you. And
Mm-hmm.
now all of a sudden you need to start showing it. I think that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too.
Anyway, so I talked about the Cowboys a little bit with our friend Ryan Jones over at Raw Mind Sports. Check him out. A little plug in there. But so I'm going to talk about something else real quick. I'm going to talk about the Ravens, actually. I really like what the Ravens did,
Mm.
because honestly, they were a team that was set up to really struggle in the offseason,
Yeah.
because they were going to lose, because no one really knew who they were going to lose, who they were going to really get back. And once Marshall Yonder retired, I was like, okay, now they really need to figure something out with all this.
Yeah.
But they
That
tagged Judon. They brought
Mhm.
back Jimmy Smith. They brought in Calais Campbell and Derek Wolfe, I want to say.
Yeah, I
So that's
think so.
good as is. And then you went to the draft, where they got a steal in Patrick Queen at 28.
Yep.
I mean, I was kind of expecting him to go there anyway, but given the Seahawks wanted a linebacker too, that was big for them to get him. Like, I
Oh,
think they needed a middle linebacker ever since Mosley left. They
yeah.
needed that quarterback of their defense, and I think that's they really needed someone like that. They needed
Mhm.
that guy who could do everything on the field, someone who came from a top-tier program like LSU, so they didn't really need to develop him all that much, because they
Yeah.
expect him to start now. And
Mhm.
I think they got him. And then they got a couple of other good pieces. Justin Matabuki was a favorite. I thought he could have gone around earlier, but I think the Ravens are going to be very happy with what they got, with what
Yeah.
they're going to get out of him.
Mhm.
And then they went into the offense because that's exactly what they needed, right? More offensive pieces to just stack the deck and everything. So, did you like last year's running attack with Mark Ingram, Lamar Jackson, a little bit of Gus Edwards and Justice Hill mixed into there? How about take this J.K. Dobbins from Ohio State that
That
dominated the Big Ten and college football in general? And then, did you want a couple more offensive pieces? Okay. How's someone who can catch 100 passes in Devin Duvernay and James Prochet sound? I'm just like, what are we doing here? That offense looks stacked.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know what they did with the offensive line, but I think that Jackson's the type of quarterback that can really extend the play, so that might not matter
I
too
do
much.
like that Ben Breadson pick
Oh,
from
that's who they got. That's who they got to replace
he
Yanda. I
can be
forgot
a
about him.
really good
So they
John.
did fix that. Okay,
Yeah.
they did find a replacement. So all
Mhm.
of a sudden, you have that offense that's filled pieces and somehow got more out of it. And then you have a defense that filled pieces. I know that this is going to sound a lot like hyperbole here, but that's the kind of draft that wins you a championship
Yeah.
at some point. If not this year, then maybe a couple years down the line. But I wouldn't be shocked if within the next few years the Ravens win another championship.
Yeah. I I can easily see it. That J.K. Dobbins pick, like you said, that backfield is just completely stacked,
Crazy.
which I wasn't a big fan of because I
Justice Hill.
love Justice Hill,
Yeah.
man. I think he can be really good. He just didn't get that many opportunities last year.
I mean, at least if they wanted to just trade him, they still have like the
Yeah.
little value. So, and there's
Yeah.
obviously going to be a few teams that could use his services.
I
So,
could easily see him being traded because right now they got 4 running backs that can
five
be
technically.
yeah, with Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson, just whoever's starting in that quarterback room, because
Yeah,
if Jackson goes down, you have RG3 who can run still. If he
that's
goes down, you have Trace McSorley who can run. So they've built that team entirely around the defense and the running game, just like they did back in 2000. And maybe the results are a little different this time around, but you can get the philosophy.
dude, their read option game will be insane because you can't have to focus on Lamar Jackson and whoever is in the backfield during that play. That will be just complete insane, you know, because you got J.K. Dobbins, Mark Ingram, Gus Edwards, and Justice Hill, and then Lamar Jackson at quarterback. That is pure asinine. But the receiver, Duvernay, is going to be a big that was a big pickup because Marquise Brown was really their only great receiver on their team, and he was injury prone at times. They needed another receiver, so Duvernay, I think, can be that option. And then they beefed up their defense with Patrick Queen. They already had one of the best defenses in the NFL. Now they add Patrick Queen. Whew, it's going to be crazy. But
Yeah, it's going to be big.
I do like their offensive line pickups because Marshall Yonda retirement. I thought that was going to make Lamar Jackson have a down year because that was a big reason why Lamar Jackson could succeed because of the time he had. And big reason of that was Marshall Yonda. But you got Ben Breton from Michigan and you got Tyree Phillips from Mississippi State. That was 2 big pickups on the offensive line. So yeah, free agency, I was doubting the Ravens a little bit, but the draft, they had an unbelievable draft.
Yeah, they look absolutely stacked at this stage. And we'll see if we can fit at least one more topic into this. So,
Um,
because I don't see any time or anything yet that's
yeah,
popped up. So, we'll go into which draft did you end up liking the least?
ooh,
Because there's at least a couple of contenders, I think.
Yeah, there are. I mean, you could go with my Seahawks, but we already talked.
Yeah, we talked about them.
I'm going to go with the Eagles, though. And I was not a big fan of the Rieger pick. I think Rieger is a good receiver, but not with all the receivers that were still on the board.
Yeah, he should not be going over the likes of Jefferson. He shouldn't have gone over the likes of Higgins. I think Ayuk probably would have been a better pick at that stage.
Yeah, and Laviska Shenault has a lot of potential too. I mean, there were receivers left on.
Yeah, there were a lot of good ones.
Mm-hmm. So why not trade down if you didn't want Jefferson? Trade down, maybe get Rieger in the early second round, but you could have also gotten other pieces. So that was a pick I don't like. And then I wasn't a big fan of Jalen Hurts in the second round. I don't understand it. You got Carson Wentz, which we already know Carson Wentz is injury prone at this point. But I'm not sure if Jalen Hurts is a fit for a backup quarterback material, especially in the second round. You got other guys that were still available that I liked a little better. You had Eason available, or just wait and go for another quarterback next year if Wentz isn't the guy, or pick up a quarterback in free agency. We see Cam Newton available. Jameis Winston was still available. There were other options. Andy Dalton was available. So you could have gone with a quarterback like that to be the backup, but you get Jalen Hurts, who had a great year last year, but he had a fumbling issue last year. I think he was close to leading the NCAA with fumbles. And you don't want that in a quarterback, especially for a second-round quarterback. Dude had a great year last year because of the system he was in. OU literally had back-to-back Heisman winning quarterbacks.
And back-to-back number one picks, don't forget.
Yeah, I mean, he was in a great system. The system before OU he was in was Alabama, who had the number 5th pick, the 5th overall pick in Tua college. I mean, he's been in great systems, but I don't think he's shown that unbelievable tag that those other quarterbacks have shown in those systems. So for a second-round pick, I'm not a big fan of. The one pick I did like was Kayvon Wallace from Clemson. I think that was a great value in the 4th round. I think he could have gone way earlier. And same with Prince Tega.
I loved that pick.
In the 6th round, a guy that was projected to be like 2nd or 3rd round. I think that was a great pickup too. So those two pickups, I'll give them a pat. Be like, okay, you had 2 good pickups in the late rounds. But in the 1st and 2nd round, you had a total bust.
Yeah, I think that's the Eagles' plan for the season for that draft was kind of obvious. They wanted to go for speed. The minute Deshaun Jackson went down for them last year, the Eagles were slow. Like they looked slow out there. So I think there's a difference between wanting to get a speedster too and just deciding to focus your whole draft around speed. First round, they drafted Jalen Reagor, who was fast, but the problem is that can he catch the ball? Like he does have issues with drops. So you may or may not have just found an Aguilar replacement. I don't know.
We already know Eagles have issues with receivers.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the remix of we were catching them on like Reagor or something. Yeah. I hope not, but you never know.
Babies left and right.
Pretty much. And then they ended up going for 3 other receivers in the draft. They drafted John Hightower, who I liked personally. Like, I could understand that, but we know why they drafted him. They drafted Quez Watkins, who was arguably the fastest receiver in the draft outside of Henry Ruggs. So we know what that was. And then they ended up sending another pick to the 49ers to claim Marquise Goodwin as a reclamation project. Guess what his trait is? Like, three guesses. And then they ended up going with Jalen Hurts, who was by far the fastest quarterback available in the draft. And I get it. The Eagles weren't in a good place when Carson Wentz was injured. I get it. But at the same time, it kind of goes into my little theory that Carson Wentz is getting kind of disrespected a lot. I mean, imagine driving to work every day and having to see a statue of your old backup every day in Nick Foles. Imagine that. And then all of a sudden, when they had a lot more needs in the secondary and the defense just in general, and then all of a sudden they decide to draft a backup quarterback in the second round. And they can tell me all they want, but they're trying to use him as a halfback. They have Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, and at least a few others that can do that. You didn't need that either, so don't try and pass that off on me. I think that Hurts was probably going to be looking at a Taysom Hill-like role in his rookie year anyway. We know that he was kind of a little more polished than Taysom Hill, I would say.
Yeah.
I would say that we know that they both have the abilities. They know that we can put them all around, just have a few trick plays designed around them and move on with it for now. But the thing is with that is that Taysom Hill was like 27, 28 when he started his career. And Hurts was from two big-time programs in Alabama and Oklahoma instead of BYU. So we have that there. There's something there. We know that. But you already drafted a quarterback just like 3 or 4 years earlier. So I just don't get it. I mean, I didn't get it then. I didn't get it now. And if I'm Wentz, how am I going to feel about all that is the thing. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to think.
This draft had a lot of like Taysom Hill-like players in it. So why would you use a second-round pick when you could have done like a Tommy Stevens from Mississippi State? You had Lynn Bowden from Kentucky. Like, there were a lot of players that had that Taysom Hill quality.
And Bowden you could put as a quarterback or a running back or receiver, anything. And we would have gotten that.
Yeah.
Like, I would have liked that if that was a pick.
In high school,
maybe not in the second round, but
in high school, Bowden even played punter. I mean, that's crazy.
Man is Mr. Versatility, let me tell you.
Yeah, but you had those Taysom Hill-like players already in this draft. No reason to use a second-round pick on one of them. That's just...
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Lynn Bowden, I think I was going to say the Raiders just because I wasn't a fan of the first-round picks, but they did kind of win me back over with a few of the other picks I made. Brian Edwards was good. I liked John Simpson. I liked Amik Robertson. So I'll give him a pass on that. So instead, I'm going to rip into the Packers a little bit.
I was between three teams: Eagles, Raiders, and Packers. So
yeah, like that's why I said there's at least a few contenders, but I think the Packers I don't know what they were going for. They had needs and they didn't fill them, which infuriates me to no end.
Their first two picks were arguably their strengths of their team.
Exactly. I mean, first of all, that's my phone going off, but whatever. But the first round, they draft Jordan Love out of Utah State. Trade up for him, mind you. 15 years to the day when they drafted Aaron Rodgers to replace Brett Favre, and all of a sudden you end up drafting his replacement. Let's be real here. The relationship between Aaron Rodgers and the Packers is not great right now. Like, there is some obvious friction, and it reminds you a little bit of Brady and the Patriots. How there was that little bit of friction that was starting to develop. Rodgers is a franchise legend, no question. But all of a sudden you have that ego into the mix. You add all that, and you add Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst, I want to say that's how you pronounce his name.
I think so.
But you have that regime saying that this is our team, this is the way we're building it, and we have to prepare for the future. Now, there's no question that Rodgers is getting old. There's no question that there was going to be the need to draft a quarterback at some point, but not in the first round when you have needs like receiver, when you have needs like tight end, when you have needs in all around your defense and your offensive line. All of a sudden, you expect me to believe that this was a good value pick, especially because that there were teams that needed quarterbacks. I get that. I get that Indianapolis needed a quarterback, for instance. But was there really a need to go from 30 to 26, I want to say? Because none of those three teams were drafting quarterbacks.
No.
There was no chance Seattle was drafting a quarterback. There was no chance Baltimore was drafting a quarterback, period. There may have been a small chance for Tennessee, but like Seattle, they could have waited if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So conceivably, if you really wanted Love, great. Then why didn't you just wait on him a little bit at 30 is the question.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially because Jordan Love is going to need at least 2 years to develop. He is basically even rawer than Josh Allen was coming out of college, and he was coming off of a down year in 2019. He was great in his sophomore year, and then the next year, it just didn't come up for him, and Utah State struggled as a whole. And as someone whose university is in the Mountain West, I can attest to that.
Mm-hmm. I like Jordan Love before last year because I thought there were talks like he would be like a 4th to 7th rounder. And I was like, oh, I like this dude. I think he can be a second-day quarterback. He has a bad year, and his stock rises. Like, what? How do people think that makes sense? You have a down year, your stock rises to the first round? I don't think that makes any sense.
I think his stock was up beforehand, but then all of a sudden it didn't really go down all that much because people were thinking that he still had this one great year. There's something there, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry. But it was kind of like Joe Burrow that was the big riser. Like, he was a day 3 pick, and then he went to number 1 because of a strong year. And I get it. It's a historic season. Of course you're going to reward it. But nevertheless, I just didn't agree with it. I think there was more needs they could have gone for if they wanted to, and it just wasn't a good fit. The second, A.J. Dillon was a bit of a reach. I like him personally. Mm-hmm. I think that the Derrick Henry comparisons kind of lifted his stock a little too high just because Derrick Henry had a great year last year, and then all of a sudden here's this younger replacement of him potentially who's big, 230-plus pounds, runs about a 4.4, which is fast for a guy that size.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the problem, though. Aaron Jones was great. You know that I love Aaron Jones. I think he's great. He's easily, to me, a top 10 running back in the league, in my opinion. Maybe I would even consider him a top 5 in some times, but I think that why would you draft someone in the second round again when you already drafted your Aaron Rodgers replacement? Well, why would you need to draft an Aaron Jones replacement is the thing. Yeah. Like, if you really want to trade him, then if I'm an NFL GM, I'd just say, hit me up. I'd love to have him on my team. I think he's great.
Yeah.
The third round pick, Josiah DeGara, there were better tight ends. Like, you drafted basically someone who was considered to be a fullback in some circles in the third round, and that's not great as is. And what kind of infuriates me a little more about is you had guys like Hunter Bryant and Thaddeus Moss that both went undrafted. And I think both of them will probably end up being better in some regards. Bryant went to the Lions, and they needed to replace Jesse James, and they need someone who can stretch the field so Hawkinson can work in the short areas. That's fine. Then you have Thaddeus Moss, who I think is going to be as close to a Jordan Reed replacement as Washington's going to get. It's understandable there. So I just didn't get that pick, but what maybe infuriates me the most about the Packers draft, what just irks me to no end, is that the deepest receiver class in recent memory, and receiver is their biggest need, and they did not draft a single one. I don't even know if they got someone big out of the undrafted free agents that were available, and there were good ones there. So I'm just like, you had the one big goal in all of this, and you couldn't get a single one, is what you're telling me?
Yeah.
I just didn't get it.
I don't either because, like you said, they needed a receiver. They didn't even take one. At least take one in the third day. You got KJ Hill that your Chargers got in the 7th round. You are telling me you couldn't take him some point in the third day? You had three six-rounders. The Packers had 3 6-rounders. Didn't use one on a receiver like KJ Hill. It makes no sense. They better use a pick next year on a receiver, because next year's class is really stacked too, with Jamar Chase.
Very top heavy, at least. Definitely.
Justin Ross, Tylen Wallace. You got to take one of those 3 receivers.
Someone's going to slip to them, and they need to take him at that point, because I saw something very interesting after the draft, and this was kind of interesting to me, that it showed all the top 10 quarterbacks that had top 10 quarterbacks in the pass touchdown totals, and then they showed all the touchdowns that went to first-round picks. Guess how many Aaron Rodgers has?
How many?
1. And it was to Mercedes Lewis either last year or 2 years ago. So it's like, I'll give credit to Aaron Rodgers, and this is kind of a testament to how good he actually is. You could argue maybe that he's managed to do the most with the least, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Has been able to get productive years out of guys who really shouldn't have been as productive as they were, maybe. Like guys like James Jones, Jordy Nelson, guys who really wouldn't have been given much of a shot outside of Green Bay. You could say that Aaron Rodgers made them. And that may have been a big – however, at the same time, you could argue that lack of commitments to the guys he's throwing to might have been the reason why they only have 1 championship in the Rodgers era. Like, would another receiver in the first round have made a difference? I don't know. But at the same time, we have to speculate now. And I've heard something from Brett Favre from ESPN that says that he doesn't expect Rodgers to end his career in Green Bay. And frankly, I agree with him. It's like, you drafted my replacement, basically. You've told me that my shelf life is whatever my contract is at this stage. And so, okay, I know that's my time is up, so I'll go somewhere that I know that I can be the guy for the last few years. And I think that, so I would imagine that whenever Rodgers' contract runs out, he's going to leave, and he's probably going to end up going back to the West Coast at some point where we're trying to establish a fan base. So basically what I'm saying is he's going to either go to the Chargers if the Herbert experiment doesn't go as planned, or he's going to the Raiders if it does.
You don't think the Niners?
The Niners have Jimmy Garoppolo. I think and they signed him to a long-term contract. I think they're okay.
We'll see, though, how Garoppolo does it.
Like, unless they weren't willing to trade him when since they were connected to Brady for at least a little bit.
Yeah.
And then they figured out that, okay, maybe that's not the greatest idea. So then they pulled out. I think that I don't see them really changing for Rodgers, especially if Jimmy Garoppolo's still taking them to Super Bowls, still taking them into deep playoff runs, because I think he's capable of that much at the very least.
Yeah.
So I think they'll still ride with him. They'll still roll with him. And I would imagine that there's places with less quarterback certainty, like the Raiders, for instance, because I don't know what's going to happen to Derek Carr.
Yeah.
I'm hearing things that say they're believing in him, and I can get it. I personally like Derek Carr. I think he's good.
And
I just wish he was in a place with better structure is all.
They got backup that has similar production in Mariota as Carr. So
pretty much. So they've basically said, like, okay, we're gonna really look at you. And I would imagine that if things don't work out for the Raiders, I can definitely see them drafting a quarterback in the deep 2021 class, because that looks crazy.
Yeah, it does. With Newman, really like Newman from Georgia. I think he could be something special.
We don't really need to mention Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields. We know they're great, and frankly, I can see them going 1 and 2.
But you got Newman, you got Brock Purdy. Those 2 guys alone probably will sneak in the first round.
Trey Lance is someone I really like out of North Dakota State.
Yeah.
Like, he has he's a dual threat quarterback, which teams love now. That's the way the league's going. You have North Dakota State, which even though they're not a powerhouse school on the level of not Oklahoma, but Alabama, Clemson, North Dakota State's cranked out some talent.
Yeah.
Like Carson Wentz and Easton Stick that's 2 straight quarterbacks that were drafted. So we know that something's going right, and we know something's coming along.
And
Maybe there's a little bit more of a development curve, but at least we know what we're getting. We know these guys have NFL quality traits about them, so we can just see what happens from there.
I believe he threw 0 interceptions.
Yeah, and he like was accountable for 40 plus touchdowns or something. That's crazy.
I think it was 48-0.
I don't think anyone's done that.
Yeah. It's
like outside of Madden or something.
Even then, man. I'll throw some interceptions.
Even then, that's doubtful. If they're just like, I feel bad, here you go.
Yeah, let's do a Hail Mary.
Hail Mary every play.
Yeah.
It's like, you like men that take risks? I do Hail Mary every play.
Oh,
there you go. Not really, but still.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have Newman, we have Purdy, we have Lance, and there's at least a few more that I think really deserve mention. Tanner Morgan, yeah.
And then there's, like you said, there's a few more that are always going to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, there's there's 2 major Texas quarterbacks in Ellinger and Mond.
Mm-hmm.
And Ellinger did improve last year, so yeah. I kind of want to look for him to keep going on that before I'm really 100% thinking, okay, this is a guy that can really show his stuff. But at the same time, he's a dual threat quarterback, which again, teams love. So I think he's kind of looking at a day 2 spot, and Kellen Mond is kind of the gunslinger out of the 2.
Yeah,
he'll throw for deep passes. He'll go for the long bomb, and teams like that because it means they can stretch the field. They can't just limit themselves to a single space. That's big.
Yeah, there's a comparison for Sam Ellinger though of Tim Tebow, which
that's the thing.
Yeah, Tim Tebow, he was decent. He took the Broncos to the playoffs,
but he never became the guy.
Yeah, he never was a first rounder like where he was drafted. And that's not what if I would draft Sam Ellinger, I would not want to have a Tim Tebow type career for it. Because
that's fair.
I mean, he's gonna get you some wins, be average, but he's not gonna take you over the next step that some other quarterbacks may do.
I mean, that makes sense to me, I think. I mean, the good news is that I don't think Ellinger would have those types of, what's the word I'm looking for here, expectations, because Tebow was seen as a god in college. Like, he was a legend in Florida. And then all of a sudden, it sort of panned out in Denver, but not really. Like, he won a playoff game against Pittsburgh, which was big, but that was kind of the apex of everything.
Yeah, and then they picked up Peyton Manning and then his career.
Yeah, once Peyton Manning was over, I think that was the minute they didn't believe in him anymore.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, there's at least a few others in there. Like, there's at least like 9 or 10 quarterbacks you could really think about being put into the first 2 days conversation. And that's big. Yeah. I can't remember the last time that happened.
And I feel like this is one of the years that a quarterback will go 1 and 2 in Lawrence and Fields.
Oh, yeah.
And we haven't had that since, I think,
Goff and Wentz.
Yeah, Goff and Wentz, which I think those Lawrence and Fields are way better.
Yeah, and both teams that got him and had to trade up for him, too. So
Goff and Wentz was a little overhyped, I think. You had Goff.
Well, to be fair, this was like the first year that North Dakota State really was like, okay, we really need to pay attention to this place. Yeah. They're getting stuff there.
A dynasty.
Yeah, so I can get it. But I would also say that Goff from California, like California wasn't a major program, not like on the level of USC or UCLA. No. So I would say that it was just a mix of these are guys who are the closest to NFL ready. They have the talent to do it. They have all the potential in the world to really make something out of themselves. I would say that Wentz has done it. He's just had a bad penchant of getting injured at the worst possible times.
Yeah.
Goff's been all right. I don't know how much of his success can be credited to Sean McVay and how much credit of it was him figuring out that the first year was bad. The first year was awful, I would even say. But ever since then, he's been at least okay. He guided the Rams to a Super Bowl, so he has that going for him at the very least.
That's true. I just think Trevor Lawrence and Fields have that potential of being two stars in the NFL.
Yeah, no question.
Literally superstars, I think.
Yeah, I've heard people say that Trevor Lawrence is arguably the best quarterback prospect they've seen since Peyton Manning, and that's huge.
Yeah. Literally since freshman year of high school, since he was a freshman in high school, he was being compared to Peyton Manning.
And then his freshman year, he ends up winning the national championship.
Yeah, he's been getting this hype since 7 years. I mean, that is unbelievable how long ago his name was getting hyped up. And then he gets to college, goes 15-0 with Clemson and wins it all. And
takes over the starting job from Kelly Bryant, too.
Yeah.
And he ends up going through that offense and not missing a beat.
Yeah, he absolutely kills one of the best teams we thought in Bama. And then he goes undefeated the next year, loses to LSU in the
But that's not his fault, I don't think. He did everything he could to keep them in that game.
That LSU team was just –
that team was not going to be stopped.
It was stacked. I mean, so he's 29-1 in his career, I believe.
Yeah, that's pretty solid.
And his high school career, I think he only lost one game too. I mean, if you lose 2 games in 6 years,
that's pretty impressive.
As a winner, shoot, that dude is a stud.
Absolutely. I think that whatever team drafts him, that's someone you need to build around it now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who it's going to be. It could be Jacksonville. It could be Washington. It could be Carolina. There's a ton of teams that are going to struggle this year that have some uncertainty at the quarterback position. And who knows? Maybe there's a team that falls in love with him and gives him a Ricky Williams or Herschel Walker style offer to whoever's at number 1 because he's just that good.
Yep.
It's going to take a king's ransom, literally, to get Trevor Lawrence on your team. And frankly, when you have a top franchise quarterback, arguably the best prospect we've ever seen, that's not going to come cheap. And everyone's going to want a piece of him.
Yeah. And that was a question people are saying, is Trevor Lawrence a lock to be a number 1 pick? The number 1 pick. I think he is. Even if a team that doesn't need a quarterback names number 1, the offers are going to be too good to pass.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So if a team I don't know what team I would be saying that would get number 1 that doesn't need a quarterback, but let's just say, I don't know, that's hard. But
let's say Miami because they just drafted Tua.
Miami is an obvious choice. Bengals possibly.
Giants because of Daniel Jones, maybe? Depending on how he develops, obviously.
Yeah. If one of those teams get the number 1 pick, they'd be a fool to not trade down because they're going to get so many good offers from a Jacksonville, from a Carolina, from a Washington Redskins team. Heck, Bills, if Josh Allen doesn't show what he has this year and take them someplace, he could honestly trade up.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of other teams that have old starters. Teams like New Orleans, who we don't know where they're going. They're committing to Taysom Hill. They say they're committing to Taysom Hill, but I know that they're not going to miss out on Trevor Lawrence if it falls.
No.
Atlanta, I think that Matt Ryan could be an option.
Yeah, Patriots.
He's getting older.
If Stidham isn't the answer, that'll be scary.
Bears if Trubisky isn't the answer either.
Oh, that's true. And I don't think Foles is the answer for
Foles
the Bears.
Is not the answer.
I mean, Foles has only done good with one team, and that's been
outside of Philadelphia. He's been mediocre at best.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would think Vikings could be a question, but then
they extended Cousins, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Raiders could be an option due to Derek Carr.
Tampa Bay, I mean.
I mean, they have a 2-year window with Tom Brady, but you add Trevor Lawrence to that mix, they're like, you're set at the quarterback position for maybe the next 15 years. And that's big. The most important position in the game. And you have stability for the next decade and a half. That's crazy.
Yeah. You got Colts who signed
Rivers for a year. Yeah.
1-year deal. So they'll be looking for a quarterback.
Cowboys, if they don't get Dak Prescott covered. You know, Jerry Jones would love to make the big splash. And what bigger splash is there?
Like, Trevor Lawrence is a moneymaker. And I don't think we've seen a quarterback getting this much hype, being the moneymaker. I mean, Johnny Manziel was a moneymaker, but
And
Johnny Manziel
that was only for a
had
short time.
Issues. Manziel had a lot of issues. Trevor Lawrence doesn't show those issues. He's like a surefire quarterback. 6'6", great passer. Seems like a great guy. I mean, the only time he's gotten in trouble was raising money on GoFundMe for a coronavirus.
Yeah, and that was stupid on the NCAA's part.
Like,
they had to overturn it because everyone was telling him, this is stupid, delete this.
Like, dude, if that's the only time you can get in trouble for raising money for a cause like that, you're doing
good.
Something right.
You're good. I'm going to laugh so hard if we have a Bo Callahan moment, like in the movie Draft Day. It's like, I expect Chadwick Boseman to just be, like, in the, wherever we're going to do the draft next year. I forget where it is. But I just expect him to, like, be sitting down there, and all of a sudden he gets drafted, and he just, like, has the wide-eyed look. Like, we're going back to draft day with that. I would just, just as a joke, I would love that.
There's like a rumor circulating that Justin Ross didn't show up to his birthday party.
Yeah. He doesn't have any friends. It's like, oh no.
He has chicks every single week, every single day. Has like 3 chicks a day.
Yeah, I just half expect something like that, like the surefire guy, and then he's no longer the surefire guy. I'm just gonna be like, where have I seen this before? It's a classic.
A team lands like 3 first-round picks because they're number 1 and trade down, and then they get him like the Seahawks did. Oh my!
Just eat your pancakes and enjoy it. Enjoy the ride. That's what that is.
Yeah. Then you got new GM like the Jags that start panicking. Oh, my goodness. We'll give our
it's like just everything aligns so perfectly for it. It's like, what is happening right now?
Dude, I was hoping that Joe Burrow was going to be the one that, because Bengals admitted, we're going to take Burrow number 1. I would have laughed if
Chase Young,
which is a defensive end from Ohio State, same thing as Vontae Mack, goes number 1.
Life imitates art, truly. That or we live in a simulation. One of them is right, and I can't tell.
I would have lost it all. I would have been laughing.
I would have been too. I would have just been like, oh my God. Because you were in the live stream. I'm sure you would have been the first to mention, this is a draft day joke happening again. And I would have been just like, oh my God, it is. Here it is. It's happening right in front of us.
I would have been laughing so hard.
Yeah, man. Anyway, so back to this draft, though.
Yeah.
And since I imagine that there's no time limit for these, so that's awesome if that's true, because I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
But is there any thoughts that you want to give about how any other team went, just to kind of wrap things up a little bit?
I'm not going to say a certain team, but a certain position. And that's a running back position. I think this running back class was overall a stacked running back class.
It was.
I mean, you only had one guy going in the first round, which was pick 32, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which he wasn't even my favorite running back. I was actually saying he may be my 5th favorite running back out this
He did
class.
fit Kansas City, though. I have to admit, I didn't like the pick as much, but it started kind of growing on me when Patrick Mahomes, something even came out that said Patrick Mahomes handpicked him, basically.
Yeah.
Like when Brett Veach texted him, hey, who do you want us to draft here? He said Clyde, and they said okay.
Yep. And Andy Reid said Clyde Edwards-Helaire reminds him of Brian Westbrook, which
Yeah.
we know.
You don't get that praise without a role being set for you already.
Especially from Brian Westbrook's old coach. I mean, that is a great praise. And then DeAndre Swift being the second running back off the board to the Lions, I questioned it because Lions have Kerryon Johnson, but Kerryon Johnson's only played in 18 of a possible 32 games in his career. He's almost missed half of his games of his career. So let's say Kerryon Johnson gets injured week 4 or something around there, you know. DeAndre Swift comes in, and I think DeAndre Swift was the best running back in this draft class, so I would expect he goes off. He takes over Kerryon Johnson's role if he goes off once Kerryon's injured, and he's the permanent starting back. So, and then you got Jonathan Taylor to the Colts, which was questionable because you had Marlon Mack.
Yeah, but that's a great situation he landed in.
Like
I would say you almost couldn't have landed in a better situation than that.
You got one of the best O-lines in the NFL. Phillip Rivers is used to having a two-headed backfield with Eckler and Gordon. Now he has Mack and Taylor. I mean, and it was smart from the Colts' perspective because they traded up one pick ahead of the Jacksonville Jaguars,
who needed a running back with Fournette.
Jaguars declined Fournette's 5th-year option, and they were thinking about trading Fournette. So you trade up to be one pick ahead of the Jaguars.
We know what you're doing there.
I think we get it. A genius pick. I think it was absolutely genius. And then Cam Akers was one of my favorite running backs. A lot of people were shocked that J.K. Dobbins didn't get picked before Cam Akers. I like Cam Akers personally better than J.K. Dobbins.
And he landed in a good situation, too, in L.A.
Yeah, he's going to be the starter since Todd Gurley's gone.
Exactly.
I mean, but we've seen how Florida State running backs have done their rookie years. Devontae Freeman went off his rookie year with the Falcons. Dalvin Cook was going off his rookie year until he got
He's
injured.
Still been going off.
Yeah. I mean, Florida State running backs, the last few they might be RBU, you know? And I think Cam Akers is nothing different. I think he's going to be an absolute beast. And then we've already mentioned J.K. Dobbins, A.J. Dillon, and Zach Moss, and how they're stacked running backs too. So overall, the running back class, I think, is absolute stacked this year.
Yeah, I would definitely – I mean, there were even a few other picks that could have been mentioned in that. Like Darrington Evans was someone that I heard about through the pre-draft process. He was fast. He was quick. And I think that's a great place for him in Tennessee to go because you have the power back in Derrick Henry, clearly. But now all of a sudden you have this elusive, get lost in space kind of guy in Evans. And you have the sort of thunder and lightning deal again, which is big. Eno Benjamin, I was surprised he fell to the 7th round.
That was a steal.
Like, that was a steal where Arizona got him because they needed running back depth. So he's going to be big in his rookie year, I think.
Yeah, I think that Eno Benjamin in like 2 years will be the starting running back for Arizona Cardinals.
Wow.
And yes, they got Kenyon
Drake. Yeah.
Drake, I mean, his career's been questionable. He had a great year with the Cardinals once he got traded from Miami. But I think Eno Benjamin is going to be a beast. I think eventually you're going to see him take over that starting job. You've seen running backs taken late or undrafted that are now starting just from 2 years ago. Like Austin Eckler was 3 years ago drafted.
Undrafted, yeah.
Undrafted. Lindsey from the Broncos was undrafted, and he was 2 years ago. Now he's like a certified, serviceable running back that might be starting, but you got Melvin
Damian
Gordon.
Williams from the Chiefs was undrafted too. And he was
I mean,
arguably the Super Bowl hero for him.
Yeah, you got these late round running backs or undrafted running backs that are now starting running backs in the NFL. And I think Benjamin will be this year's late round pick.
Yeah, I think all that depth just goes to show that the running back position, even though everyone says it's undervalued, I think that teams are now starting to get into the idea that there is a very unforgiving curve with them. Like once you hit age 30 or so, that's the time that running backs usually fall off a cliff. And you'll get guys like Adrian Peterson and Frank Gore that defy all that, but those are the exceptions to the rule. Usually everyone else just falls to the wayside at that stage.
Even then, took a step back once they hit like 30. I mean,
yeah,
they're not anywhere near what they were once before.
Yeah, that's the thing. So basically the rookie contract that they get is arguably going to be the closest thing to value you're going to get at that position. And that's why teams are are uncertain of getting a running back at a high price, or at least for a long period of time. Because Le'Veon Bell was ripped apart for holding out. We all know that. But unfortunately, it seems that's begun a trend with the position for guys who are in contract years to hold out, try and get more money, even though the position isn't great. The position isn't great at landing value. We saw Ezekiel Elliott and Melvin Gordon hold out last year. Elliott got his contract. I think Gordon's bombed. I have to say that. Like, I think that it just wasn't worth it with what he got in the end. This year, the current news is that Joe Mixon's thinking about it. I don't know if he's going to go through with it or not. I hope he doesn't, but I just don't think it's a good call. And it's no surprise that two major contracts in Todd Gurley and David Johnson Todd Gurley was cut because no one wanted to trade for him, and David Johnson was basically sent off to Houston because they needed a running back, and they didn't want to pay DeAndre Hopkins, but they wanted to give David Johnson his contract and take the whole thing.
You forgot one big running back too that was being paid, Devontae Freeman.
He's gone too, yeah.
And he's still not on a team.
He's not even, and the Falcons ended up taking Gurley for a 1-year prove-it deal.
Yep.
That's a far cry from what he got.
Yeah.
It makes me really nervous about Christian McCaffrey's big deal a little bit, just because he's good. Like, we know he's a 3-down guy. That's great. That's awesome. The problem is he's been hogging up carries ever since Stanford, basically, ever since his last couple years there. He's been in the same role in Carolina ever since. Eventually, all of that is going to add to the wear and tear on your body. And I frankly think that if he gets a couple big injuries, that's going to be it. Like, just because the running back position is so volatile and so unforgiving that eventually, like, even the smallest setback can be enough. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So I just think that
I look at that McCaffrey deal though a little as just keeping excitement with the fans. They're not in contending mode, and they had a lot of money to spend. Why not spend it on a guy that will keep your fans interested while you're in a rebuilding mode?
That's fair.
You can get Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields possibly next year's draft. Once you're finally ready to contend, Christian McCaffrey will be off the books, arguably.
Possibly.
So, I mean, I think that deal, just to extend him, was to keep the fans interested. While you're in a rebuilding mode, you're not going to be any good. So, sign someone that will keep the fans interested, sell tickets. It's a business move.
I mean, yeah, I get that. I would definitely understand it at the very least. So we just have to see how that all ends up shaking out, because obviously after the first year or so, I'd be interested in revisiting that contract after a couple years, maybe. Okay, that was something that happened. But I'd be interested in seeing that contract in a couple years and just
Yeah.
figuring out, like, was this a good idea? Because we
Mhm.
know the Panthers were going to rebuild their defense, I think,
Yeah.
which was
Yeah.
understandable.
Mhm.
And so the narrative that I wanted to go into was that I think about it a little more, and I'm imagining that this year's quarterback crop may have been hurt a little bit by next year's, just because
Yeah.
we know that next year's quarterback crop is stacked, and there's a few names that we never mentioned that are still going to be there. And
Mhm.
guys like Burrow are going to pop up no matter what. Like, I imagine
Yep.
there's going to be one or two guys within this season that we're going to say, we never knew these guys were this good, so now they have a shot.
Yeah.
So obviously we knew the top four. We knew that Burrow was number
Well,
one. We knew that
uh,
Tua and Herbert were going to go early, and Love was a good bet to go in the first round no matter what, because quarterback.
yep.
And then Jalen Hurts was probably going to go day two. Maybe not as early as he did, but we knew he was going at that spot. And
Eason.
Jake Eason, and at least one of Eason and Fromm I was expecting to go in day two as well, if not both of them. And then you
Yeah.
had all these day three quarterbacks. And obviously we saw guys who got a lot of buzz in the pre-draft process, like James Morgan and Cole McDonald. They went. But then you
Mhm.
have guys like Anthony Gordon, Steven Montez that were left out in the cold. And I thought they were good. I thought that, okay,
Yeah.
there's things to work with here. Obviously, we're going to need to
Mentioned
development.
Luton from Oregon State in the 6th round.
Luton from Oregon State in the 6th, Nate Stanley in the 7th. That
Yeah.
was a decent deal.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to go in like in the fifth round. I would think.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
there were a lot of good quarterbacks that were kind of left on the wayside a little bit,
Yeah.
and even the quarterbacks like Eason, Fromm, Stanley, like, their values I think may have plummeted a little bit just because everyone's looking into the future a little bit.
Yeah.
Everyone's seeing that 2021 class and thinking, if we're going to get our legitimate quarterback of the future, this is going to most likely be the year where we do it.
Mhm.
And it's
Because
not saying that any of the 2020 quarterbacks can't be that guy. There's at least a few guys who I think, with a little bit of development, they could be something. But
mhm.
there's a difference between being something and being a potential franchise quarterback, or at least a starter. And
Mhm.
2021 is going to have a lot more of those guys than 2020 did.
Facts. Because we didn't even mention KJ Costello in
Yeah,
2021.
KJ Costello, too.
He's gonna be a pretty good quarterback, let's say for 2nd or 3rd round, just because you got 4 guys that are better than him
Yep.
already. But he's gonna be a sneaky mid-round pick, I think. And then I think the top 4 next year are way better than top 4 this year.
Oh, yeah, I would agree.
I mean, top 2 easily is better.
Top two
You
is
got
easily better. You could even argue
Lawrence.
that they're better than, like, Joe Burrow, even.
Yeah,
Like,
I
Lawrence is
think,
better. I would say Fields is probably a little better just because dual threat. But
and I think that Newman has the potential of going off this year. You've
with
seen,
Georgia, yeah, easy.
I think his stock just is rised after he transferred to Georgia, and
Yeah,
he's
I thought he
gonna.
was good at Wake Forest, too, is the thing.
I did
I thought
too.
he did a really good job there.
He's honestly gonna be a Heisman contender this year. I think.
Wow.
I think that he may win the Heisman realistically, and that's not saying that he's better than like Trevor Lawrence, but Trevor Lawrence also has ETN that is gonna get carries. Trevor
He
Lawrence
has
just
that whole system around him.
yeah, he's just not gonna get as much. Oh, he has like all these unbelievable stats because I mean Clemson has has one football with all these different mouths to feed. So Jamie Newman, though, I think can be that guy that has a star-studded year. And then you got Brock Purdy, I honestly think Brock Purdy may be the Patriots' future. I think Patriots are going to look at Brock Purdy in the first round next year. I think he would fit that system perfectly.
Yeah, I would get that. I think the one knock two knocks really that Purdy has is the size, but that can be worked around. We've seen that before. And plus, the other reason would be that Iowa State's not exactly this hotbed for quarterback talent, maybe even NFL talent. But at the same time, I like what's his name, Matt Campbell. I like what he's doing. And I've heard, like, outside of Lincoln Riley and Matt Rule, he was a guy that a lot of people are thinking, if there's someone who's going to make the jump, this is it. Because he's done a great job. He's built up a defense. He's built up the defensive side of the ball very well there. And now all of a sudden he's working with Brock Purdy, and he's arguably going to be a first rounder, barring any injuries or collapses. That's big.
I mean, Matt Campbell's done a great job. He took over a program that was consistently 2-10, bottom of the Big 12, along with Kansas, and turned them to like a 8-9 win team who is now like on near the top of the Big 12, along with OU, Oklahoma State, Baylor, and then Iowa State. I mean,
that's
he's
big.
really turned that team around. So Matt Campbell is developing talent. You saw David Montgomery being
exactly
back last year. I mean, I still like David Montgomery. He just wasn't used properly in the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I think this year they're going to try and change that, or at least I would hope they do.
He just wasn't getting the carries that he needed to elevate his game.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, like, there's a lot of good quarterbacks in that draft. Guys who at least you can build for a year or two and reasonably say that, yeah, this is going to be good. And it makes me really interested in how the college football season's going to go, just because you have all these guys you need to look at, all these quarterbacks. And there's at least a couple we never even got to yet. Like Kyle Trask, I'm interested to see how he repeats Florida. Ian Book, I'm interested to see how Notre Dame does.
Yep.
Justin Fields, even. Ohio State lost like almost all of their top 4 receivers outside of Olave, I want to say. Yeah. And he's going to be without Dobbins, so he might be asked to do a lot more than he did this year. And this year was great as is.
Yeah.
And then you have like a few other mid-major guys you can throw into the mix. Shane Buckle from SMU is really good. I like him. Zach Thomas from Appalachian State fits the dual threat quarterback mold that people like. And I don't know if he's going to be eligible this year, but Derek King making the jump from Houston to Miami, I'm interested to see that. And even Justin Rogers in UNLV. I know that may be a bit of a homer pick, and I don't know if he's going to be much of a – I don't know if he's going to end up being someone who gets the waiver to play this upcoming season. But I'm interested to see how he does, because I think he's going to have that fire in his belly. He's going to be he's easily the biggest transfer that UNLV's had in their history.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to want to make good of that. This is his second opportunity, and I think that he's going to really shine. Personally.
Yeah. Dude, this 2021 draft class for offense is just going to be so stacked. You got one of the best receiving class. You got one of the best quarterback classes. You got a pretty good running back class with Etienne and Chuba being headlining that position for the 2021.
Receivers are stacked.
Yep. You got one. I think next year's receiving class may be better than this year's. I mean,
there's a lot more top talent in that, definitely.
You got Jamar Chase, you got Justin Ross, you got Tylan Wallace, and there's others too.
Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith from Alabama.
Yep.
Rashad Bateman, Rondale Moore.
There's so many good receivers in next year's class, and it's going to be interesting to see who will fall in, like, let's say the third round because of how stacked these positions are. Because there's going to be some that are going to fall just because of how stacked they are. So it'll be interesting who is going to get a steal in the third round, in the fourth round, you know?
Yep. I mean, I would say that we're going to be seeing a lot of good receiving cores in the next few years. At least I would hope we do, because that's going to
Yeah.
make the game a whole lot more exciting, especially with the pass-happy nature that the league's been shifting to over the last few years. Like, that's
Yep.
just perfect for this.
Very true.
But anyway, so I think that's probably a good place to call it. So, Michael, thank you so much for hopping along. And
Thank you, man.
hope you guys enjoyed this. Please feel free to follow me on Instagram at the Sports Nerd Speaks and follow my blog. There will be an article about the draft from other fans in there within this weekend. I'll get the NHL simulation post up, and I will probably want to talk about that 2021 class a little bit, obviously. Michael, do you want to tag yourself at all?
So on YouTube, Youngblood Sports Talk, and then on Instagram, Michael Bollig 2000. So if you want to follow me there, go ahead.
All right. So thanks, man. Thank you
Thank
so
you, man.
much.